Daniel Voss stood up at his own engagement party and thanked the woman who made all of this possible. And then he pointed at Priya Shah, my assistant of 8 months, instead of me. The room clapped. Champagne glasses lifted. I sat at the back table in the dress I'd bought for this exact night, and I felt something in my chest go very quiet, the way a building goes quiet right before it's demolished. In my last life I had smiled through that toast. I had told myself he was nervous, that he misspoke, that 6 years of building his company with him meant more than one careless sentence. I had stayed. I had kept signing the contracts he put in front of me without reading the fine print, because I trusted the man, not the paper. 6 months after that engagement party, Daniel Voss fired me from the company I co-founded, using a clause I had signed at 2 a.m. after a product launch, too exhausted to read past the highlighted line. Priya Shah became Chief Operating Officer. I became a cautionary tale, the founder who couldn't handle success, the industry called me. I lost the company. I lost my name on the patent. I lost the apartment we'd bought together, because it turned out only his name was on the deed. I found that out the night I lost everything else too, standing on a rain-soaked curb in November, watching the lights of the office I'd built go dark one floor at a time, until a car I didn't see coming solved the rest of the problem for the universe. The last thing I remembered was cold asphalt and the taste of copper. The first thing I remembered after that was Daniel's voice, warm and rehearsed, saying, "The woman who made all of this possible," and pointing at Priya Shah. I was back. 11 months before the accident. The night of the engagement party. My own life handed back to me like a contract I'd get to read this time before I signed it. I didn't cry. I didn't smile either. I picked up my water glass because in this life I intended to keep my head very, very clear. "Excuse me," I said to the table, and walked to the small office off the ballroom where I knew, because I remembered everything now. Daniel kept a locked drawer with a copy of every document he didn't want circulating widely. I had 6 months. 6 months until the clause. 6 months until the betrayal I hadn't even known was a betrayal, because I'd been too busy loving a man who'd already decided I was disposable. This time I wasn't going to spend them being loved. I was going to spend them being careful. The next morning I did something I never did in my last life. I hired my own lawyer. Not the company's counsel, not Daniel's college friend who handled everything for us. A woman named Renata Cole, sharp-eyed, unimpressed by my company's name on the building directory, who read the operating agreement I'd signed 11 months ago the way a surgeon reads an X-ray. "This clause," she said, tapping a paragraph I remembered too well, "lets him remove you as an officer if the board finds you, quote, incapacitated or acting against the company's commercial interest, unquote." "Who controls the board?" "He appoints 2 of 3 seats," I said. My voice didn't shake. That surprised me more than it should have. Renata looked up. "Did you know that when you signed it?" "I know it now." She didn't ask what that meant. Lawyers rarely do when a client already sounds sure. For the next 5 months I did the quiet work. Not sabotage documentation. Every product decision I made, I logged with a timestamp and a rationale, CC'd to myself at a personal email Daniel didn't know existed. Every time Priya clarified one of my instructions to the engineering team in a way that just happened to remove my name from the changelog, I saved the message. Every time Daniel took a meeting so you don't have to deal with the investor stuff, I asked politely to be looped in, and noted just as politely when I wasn't. In my last life I had called this pattern love. This time I called it evidence. Priya was good at her job. That was the part that had fooled me before. I'd mistaken her competence for loyalty. She was competent. She was also the kind of colleague who complimented you in meetings and edited your work the moment you left the room. I watched her do it 3 times before I said anything because I wanted the pattern, not the incident. The 4th time I didn't confront her. I forwarded the original file, the clarified file, and a timestamp comparison to Daniel and our third board member, a quiet, precise man named Arthur Lynn who mostly stayed out of company drama, and I now remembered was the one person Daniel had never quite managed to charm. Daniel called me that night. "Why does Arthur have this?" "Because Arthur's on the board," I said. "And because I'd rather he see the pattern from data than from a fight." "There's no pattern. Priya tightens language sometimes. That's her job. Removing my name from 3 separate changelogs isn't tightening language, Daniel. It's authorship. Silence. In my last life, that silence would have terrified me into apologizing for bringing it up. This time, I let it sit there until he was the one who broke it. "You've been different lately," he said. "I've been paying attention," I said. "It looks different from the outside." The engagement itself I let happen. That surprised even me. I wasn't trying to win him back or punish him by leaving early. I was trying to see clearly what kind of man he was when he thought he'd already secured everything he needed from me. A man shows you his real priorities once he believes the outcome is settled. I wanted to watch him show me. He showed me plenty. He scheduled our wedding planning around Priya's product launches. He introduced me to investors as my partner, and then let a silence hang exactly long enough for them to assume he meant romantically, not professionally, a silence he never corrected. He forgot twice that I was the one who'd written the original patent language he quoted word for word, in a keynote crediting the team's innovative thinking. The old version of me had noticed all of this too back then. She just decided it didn't matter as much as being chosen by him. I was done being chosen. I wanted to be credited. 3 weeks before the 6-month mark, the point where in my last life the board clause had quietly activated against me, I filed for a formal governance review. Not a lawsuit. Not a leak to the press. A review requested by a founding officer, backed by documentation, addressed to Arthur Lynn. Daniel found out an hour later. He came to my office, tie loosened, the particular controlled anger he used instead of shouting. "You're doing this now? Before the wedding?" "I'm doing this because of the wedding," I said. "I read the operating agreement again last week. There's a clause that lets you remove me as an officer if the board decides I'm acting against the company's interest. Did you know I signed that at 2 in the morning the night we shipped version 2? I don't remember the details of every." "I do," I said. "I remember everything now." He didn't understand what I meant by that. He never would. That was fine. Some truths aren't for the person who caused them. They're for the person who survived them. The review took 11 days. Arthur Lynn, it turned out, had been quietly uneasy about Priya's rising authority for months. He just hadn't had proof, only a feeling he couldn't defend in a board meeting. I gave him proof. Timestamps. Original files. The clause itself, and the fact that it had been drafted 6 weeks before I signed it, in a version of the agreement Daniel's lawyer friend had prepared without showing me the red line. The board didn't fire me. They removed the clause, restructured board control to 3 independent seats instead of 2 appointed by Daniel, and opened a formal inquiry into whether Priya's authorship changes constituted a pattern of professional misconduct. Priya resigned before the inquiry concluded. She didn't cry in front of me the way she might have wanted to. I made sure of that. I wasn't in the room. I'd learned this time that some victories don't need an audience to be real. Daniel came to my apartment the night her resignation became official. Not our apartment, mine, the one I'd made sure this time had only my name on the lease. "You could have talked to me," he said, standing in my doorway like a man who still believed doors open for him by default, instead of going to Arthur. Instead of the whole formal review. "I did talk to you," I said. 11 months of talking to you. You just weren't listening, you were managing me. That's not fair." "It's accurate," I said. "There's a difference. You taught me that." He didn't ask what I meant by 11 months. He couldn't have understood the answer. Some things you only learn by dying first. I never meant to make you feel replaceable, he said, and for a second, just a second, I heard something almost like the man I used to love, before I understood what loving him had cost. I know, I said. That's the part that scares me about you. You never had to mean it. It just happened anyway, every time it was convenient. He left. He didn't try to stop the elevator door this time because there was no elevator, no dramatic hallway, no gallery-lit hotel steps. Just a hallway with bad lighting and a woman who had finally stopped waiting to be chosen correctly by someone else. A year later, I stood on a stage at a founders conference, my name on the slide behind me, my patent under my own name for the first time since I'd filed it. I talked about governance, about the quiet ways companies erase the people who build them, about reading the fine print before you sign away your own authorship, literally and otherwise. Someone in the crowd asked the question I'd been waiting for without knowing it. What's the one thing you'd tell someone still in the relationship, professional or otherwise, where they're being slowly erased? I thought about the version of me who died on a rain-soaked curb, still believing she just hadn't tried hard enough. Erasure doesn't announce itself, I said. It just asks you to be a little smaller, a little quieter, a little more grateful, one meeting at a time, until you can't remember what your name looked like before someone else's was written over it. The moment you notice that happening is the moment to stop being generous with your own disappearance. The applause took a second to start, then it didn't stop for a while. I didn't look for Daniel in the crowd. I didn't need to know if he was there. For the first time in either of my lives, that wasn't the ending I was writing toward.